Лёша, он сейчас должен включить трансляцию, начать. Все, он начал. Маш, можешь начинать.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the 5th speaker session of the 3rd season of the Startup Hard project. Our mission is to encourage talented young people to generate their own ideas through the implementations of their projects, and to give them an opportunity to find mentors, investors, partners, or business angels. Today's speaker session is a great opportunity for all of you not only to find out more about startups in the global digital world, but also to improve your English at some point. Moreover, we'd like you to stay tuned during the break. We'll host a quiz where you can win some unique prizes from our partners. Well, now it's just the right time to begin, and I'd like to solemnly welcome our first speaker, Екатерina Logvинович. She's a lawyer at SBH Law Offices. The topic of her speech is business registration for startup. Екатерina, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all. My name is Екатерina Logvинович, and I am an associate in SBH Law Offices. And I specialize primarily in corporate law and investment support, from business angels and venture capital investments to transnational M&A transactions. Also, I consult IT companies on various issues and specialize in taxes. My law firm, SBH Law Offices, is a regional firm with offices in Ukraine and Belarus, and we provide the full scope of legal services for business, including business registration in high technology spark, intellectual property protection, representation of the interest in the court, and so on. And we have the honor to have the global IT companies among our clients, as well as we are proud to support local startup communities in our activities. For example, we cooperate with the Imaguru and Minsk Tech Minsk Venture Fund in its funding activities. The topic of my speech is registration of business, why the registration is necessary, what the stages you should take into account, and what are the primary issues the founders shall be focused on. And turning to the first issue, which is the reasons why the registration is necessary. The first moment is that registration is about your legal safety. So what we mean under registration of business is to register a company, to maintain your business, to sell your products, to employ your employees, and to pay taxes. So under legislation of any country, if you gain money from your activity, this is business, and thus it needs to be registered and comply with the legal regulations. Certainly, if you have an idea which you develop and a team which consists of a few persons which are inspired to develop your product, there is no need to register a company at the moment, but the company shall be registered by the moment when you receive your first money. And because you receive money, it's business, and since it's business, it shall be registered. So primarily the registration is about safety and safety of all the persons which are involved in the activities of your company. So these are firstly founders, secondly your team, including developers, maybe market analysts, and so on, your future investors, and business in general. As concerning the founders, there are three core interests which are protected by the business registration. And the first is compliance with law. If you receive some income without any official source, the tax authorities usually have the questions, what is this income and what is the source of your money? And if you will not have any lawful basis to receive this money, you can be found in violation of the laws. You can be imposed with some fines from tax authorities. So this is the question of your personal financial safety, as well as your clear history without any economic crimes and violations. Second, registration of business is the way to formalize and to fix your contribution to business. For example, if there are 3 founders, you go to the registration authority and you register a company in which each of the founders have the share, for example, 33%, or you can determine the share as you would like. This share in business is your official contribution to business, which grants you the right to management, right to portion of profits. You can share, you can sell your share to the investor and so on when you would like to exit from the company. So it's something that you formalized. And if you do not have a company, your contribution is, it is not fixed anywhere. So the company will help you to stay in the management and to be involved in the business and the decision-making process. And third, it's the limitation of your personal liability for the debts of your business. When you register a company, it has its own responsibility under national laws. It has its own bank accounts, its own obligations and rights. And so even if the startup will finish its activities, debts will be paid by the company itself, not from your personal income. And it's important that your losses, possible losses and losses of the investors will be limited only by their contribution, but not any money that you have. As concerning the developers and team members, they are also obliged to pay taxes from the income that they receive. So you could not simply pay them money for development of the project, but they should file some tax returns and explain to tax authorities where this source comes from. And if you hire officially your team to the company, you protect them from the legal perspective and save from any questions from the state authorities. So I think it's a great motivation for your team to be officially hired. As concerning the investors, the interests are quite similar to those of the founders. So firstly, investors want to ensure that business will be stable and transparent with the law. And for investors, registration proves also the seriousness of founders, their readiness to comply with the formalities. It's a great possibility to formalize the investment. So if the investor gives you money, he usually would like to receive a share. If we will look on all the investments instruments that are usually used, loans, convertible loans, safes, and so on, they all are concluded with the companies, not with personal founders. That's why if you start to raise your round, if you would like to participate in any accelerator venture capital fund activities, it's usually one of the first things that you will be asked before your idea will be discussed. This is to register the company and to transfer intellectual property rights from persons to it. This is not simply the desire of the investor, but this is like quite objective requirement for stability of the business, because if there will be some problems in personal relations between the founders, the company which possesses all the assets and all the rights will continue to exist, and the business will work despite any possible problems, personal problems. And apart from the legal safety, business registration, it's about mitigation of risks and compliance with laws. So if you act transparently, the risk to lose money is lower. And about your business reputation, because the presence of registration will show to your partners, investors, clients that you create a real existing business that is regulated under the laws, that they can rely on you, and simply that you're a transparent, good counter-agent to enter into relations with. what concerns the forms of entities and jurisdictions, there are various forms of such entities, such as limited liability companies in Russian, общество с ограниченной ответственностью, stock companies, акционерные общества, partnerships, товарищество, партнерство, but only few of them are appropriate for startups. Firstly, in the view of restricting liability, as I have told earlier, investors and founders need to restrict their liability by their contribution, and not all the entities provide such possibility. In Belarus, it's stock companies and limited liability companies, but the appropriate form is limited liability company, общество с ограниченной ответственностью. Firstly, because it protects owners from the debts of the company, and secondly, because it's the most comfortable for the investors to give money. In specific cases, when you will need company in the USA or the United Kingdom, the appropriate form will be a stock company. This is акционерное общество in Russian. It also limits the liability, and it's also more comfortable for the investors in this jurisdiction to give money. So in Belarus, it's limited liability company, and in the USA and UK, it's usually stock company or stock corporation. As concerning the jurisdictions, there are in general 3 options. And the first option is the country where the founders are physically located. So if your founders are all in Belarus, your team is in Belarus, your clients are also here, it's, I think the best option is to start from business here and to register a company in Minsk. Sometimes startups also incorporate in other jurisdictions, for example, so-called offshore jurisdictions like Cyprus, Delaware, or jurisdictions which provide some specific preferences for IT companies. In Belarus, the example is the High Technologies Park, which provides very sufficient tax preferences. That's why in Belarus, many foreign countries are also incorporated, not only Belarusian startups. But this is the important issue when the business is growing and you see the necessity to lower the cost for the taxes. The third option is the jurisdictions with developed ecosystems. They are firstly USA, Silicon Valley, sometimes UK, Israel. I know the examples when startups go there because it's easier to find money, because there are more startups, more investors, more venture funds. Maybe sometimes the startups also participate in some local accelerators and so on, and that's why they need to incorporate here. But in general, on all the stages, I recommend to start from your own country, because it's easier to manage the company like in place when you're physically present. But with growth of business and with raising funds, you shall be ready to the possible development of the structure of your company. Sometimes you will need like holding company in Delaware to hold all the assets and for your investments, and for example, the company in Belarus in place. The procedure of registration of the company is not very complicated in any jurisdiction, but the terms could differ. On the slide, you can see the example of Belarus, what you shall do to register a company. So the first stage is to find a legal address. You may have the real office for your employees, but if you do not need it, you could simply rent an address and to insert it to your registration documents. Then you shall visit the registration authority and agree the name of the company. This is needed to confirm that there are no companies with the same name. So this is usually quite a quick procedure, but you shall check all the requirements about like there are some prohibited words which you could not use and so Thirdly, you shall decide who will be the director of your company. So it shall be the member of your team who will be responsible for the current activities. So it's CEO. Maybe you have one, or you will need to decide who will be like the most responsible person for all the organization issues. Thirdly, you shall decide the decision on creation of the company, pay the state fee. This is not a big amount, and go to the authorities and submit these documents. They include the application, which is about the details of the founders, which are granted with the share, and the charter. The charter is usually a standard corporate document which regulates the management within the company and some basic provisions of its activities. And a few days later, you will receive automatically issued certificates of registration in other authorities, such as tax authorities, statistics authorities, and then you can register your bank account. So the procedure is quite simple. It is similar in other jurisdictions, but there can be differences. For example, we know the ways when the company in Delaware could be registered even more quickly than in Belarus, because it could be registered remotely by simply filling the questionnaire, and that's all. So this is what shall be checked with each the jurisdiction. But in Belarus, it will take for about 1 or 2 weeks to start your activities as the company. About the corporate management, there are 3 obligatory management bodies that shall be in any event in your company. So firstly is general meeting of the shareholders. These are all the persons which are granted the share in the statutory fund. At the first stage, these persons are simply the founders, but with the development of business, the shareholders could be investors, advisors, employees which are granted the share, and that's all. The general meeting decides the most fundamental issues. For example, it holds the annual meeting, approves accounting statement, distributes profits of the company to the shareholder, and usually elects other corporate bodies. The director or CEO, as I have mentioned, performs all current activities. So it signs the contract, it manages money, it represents all your interests without any power of attorney. So it shall be a person whom you really rely, because his powers under our legislation are quite wide, and in many relations they could not be limited. So he has absolute power to represent your company anywhere, and this is what shall be taken into account. The third official is the auditor or revizor in Russian. This is a person who checks the financial activities and documents. This is quite a formal figure. So usually he looks through the documents before the annual meeting and drafts a short report that the activities are okay with the law. But this is a person who shall be appointed like a formal requirement under the legislation. Another management body is board of directors. I have written that this is optional. On the first stages, you will not need this organ, but with the investment to the company, some investors which provide sufficient sums could ask you to form this organ, and where the investors will be also represented. And this organ will execute supervisory authority, so it determines the strategy of the company, maybe approves the largest transactions, but it is not involved in the current activities as a director, so only on the most important issues. Apart from the registration, what is very important from my point of view is also your further actions, because it's not enough simply to register a company. The company shall be transparent and its corporate history shall be understandable for the investors, because this is what they will check during all your rounds. They will look through your documents and ask you questions why this decision is made in such form, why the shares distribution is like that. So this is very important to avoid mistakes from the very beginning of the registration, to make your corporate structure reasonable, to lower costs further, and not to waste your time before the investment round. So we know, for example, the practice when the startup create the company in proper form, for example, in the USA in the form of limited liability company, which is very uncomfortable for investors. And they were simply to close this company and register another one. So if they had a proper form initially, they will not lose time before they will receive this money. So after the registration, you shall check the following important moments. First, it's proper making of corporate decision. So these rules are written in your charter, and you shall comply with it. It concerns the quorum, the compliance with the rights of the shareholders, receiving approvals from the management bodies if they're necessary. Secondly, it's the conclusion of contract with the clients and all the cash flows under them. So I think it's like the initial aim of registering a company. So you like make a uniform approach to all your cash flows. Your clients shall know that you have this one entity and all the transactions are made from them. So you will not have some third sources of income. All the sources will be in one entity. Thirdly, it's formalizing the relationship between the company and all its employees, especially its key developers. My colleague Anna will tell you about this in detail, but this is not simply to hire a person, but to also include confidentiality clauses, transfer of intellectual property rights, and the regular payment of salaries, because all of these possible risks for the investor of inconsistency with the laws. Fourthly, it's transfer of intellectual property from the founders and developers to the company, because if the company doesn't have intellectual property in its ownership, there is a risk that you can lose all your business because one of the developers simply registers it or uses for its own idea. So if we speak about IT startups, it's the core protection of business is to check your intellectual property and to transfer all from persons to the company. The two issues which remain is the payment of taxes. They are paid a few times within a year, so you shall check the dates. It's better to have the accountant to avoid fines and to avoid problems with the state organs. And for this purpose, you shall also reflect all your operations in your accounting statements. So to sum up, the company shall be registered, but it could be done. It shall not be done immediately. The company will be needed when your first money will be gained. The appropriate form for Belarus is limited liability company because it's limit the liability of the founders, and it also is comfortable for investors. I recommend to start from the jurisdiction where the team is physically located, founders team and supposedly the clients, but you shall be ready that with the investments rounds and the growth of the business, your structure could become more complicated and involve other jurisdictions to save the investments and maybe to extend your business to other markets. Corporate structure shall be made in details and considered in details on the first stages, because any mistakes in the structure will be difficult to change further, and it could take more money to mitigate these risks. And the last point is that registration is only the first stage. So your business shall be in general consistent with the laws, so that it will be safe for the investors and transparent for the employees and stable in its commercial activities. So as concerning my speech, that's all. On this slide, you can see the contact information, and certainly we have about 5-7 minutes for the questions if there are any.
Yes, thank you so much for this amazing speech, Екатерina. And yes, we have some questions from our followers. The first one would be, what is the most difficult in any company's registration, in your opinion?
I think the most difficult is to decide on the corporate structure and the relations between founders, because the contribution of different founders could be also different. So you can decide that contribution of each of the founders is equal and you will divide the company by, I don't know, 3 parts. But somebody could say that, no, my contribution is bigger and your contribution is lower. So I think that the core and the potential for problems is the ability of the founders to decide what their relations shall be and which share each of them shall possess. And in other part, I do not see the problems in the registration procedure, because this is quite a formal action. So the documents are usually standard, the procedure is not very difficult. So yes, I do not see any problems apart from this agreement between the founders.
Okay, thank you so much. The second question is, when isn't it worth registering a company?
Could you please repeat, because I did not hear?
Yes, when isn't it worth registering a company?
So as I understand, this means that whether there are situations when the company is not needed.
I guess so, yes.
It's not needed when you do not receive money. It could take quite a long time. So if you're developing your idea, if you're simply working, trying to find clients, there is no need for a company. But when the issue of money arises, company will be needed. I do not know situations when startups could grow without a company. So it's a very strange situation when the startup acts like individual entrepreneur or separate individuals. You will face the situation when, for your further growth and for attracting investors, you will need to incorporate. So I think this is the obligatory stage for all the startups, but the certain moment depends on the speed of development of your business and on the moment of monetization of your product.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, how often do you need to confirm startup registration?
We have regular moments with startup registration, so it's like a standard legal service of our company. But it doesn't mean that you could not register it without a law firm. So you shall decide in your certain circumstances whether you need simply to form it briefly on the basis of standard documents and simply to continue to exercise your activities, or maybe you will be already within the investment round when you shall take into account the preferences of the investors and their interest, and maybe in such case you will need a lawyer. But in general, this is business registration is quite standard legal service, and almost all business consultants provide such services.
Well, thank you so much, Екатерina. That was amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, and now friendly reminder, don't forget about the quiz we'll host after our next speaker's speech, and appreciation for our next speaker, Nedelchuk. He's a CEO and founder of Locally, and his speech is 8 tips from businessmen on how to succeed in a travel startup during the global pandemic. You're welcome, Nick.
Thanks a lot, Maria. It's an honor to be invited here. Welcome, everyone. So I'm Nick. I'm a CEO and a founder of a startup, as many of us probably. Currently, I'm based in the Netherlands. This is the country where I moved to from Russia and where I'm developing my international business. I have prepared this short deck just to share my own experience. My experience was full of struggle and full of hustle because I'm the guy who is basically leading a travel tech startup in the middle of pandemic. So I'm gonna try to share the screen. Hopefully I'll make it happen. Here we go. All right, so I think you see my screen. Perfect. So it's already the 4th year since I've got this idea of locally. I was working in corporate world for quite a long time, based first in St. Petersburg, where I started my career with Ford Motor Company, and then I switched to IKEA later. Then I also relocated to Moscow country office of IKEA, where I was performing the role of IT project manager. My story continues with the Netherlands, because this is the country where I relocated from Moscow, as IKEA has their headquarters located in that country. And I also actually just found a role of IT project manager in its global headquarters for the global projects that we were conducting. And that's how I finally moved in here. So perfect life with a stable salary and some social benefits. I was completely done with that, to be quite honest. So definitely there is a sort of people who feel really overwhelming with working for corporations. Still, the corporations is a great place to learn how to deal with other people, how to negotiate things, and just got some, general knowledge of how to create the processes and how to make, working routines, how to make the business work and generate tons of money for you. But back then I was just overwhelmed by working for the corporation, by the bureaucracy. Small hint: when you are transferring from the local country office into the global headquarters, you are facing even more bureaucracy, because the people who are located in the central office, they normally do strategic work, and that gives a space for more bureaucracy, and they just put a lot of leverage to make the processes to be changed harder, because every single change has a tremendous impact on the business from the up and to down. So I was always dreaming in parallel, even when I was based in Russia, to start my own business. I had no idea how to do that, and that was my problem. The only thing I was inspired by, actually, the companies where I'm working, Ford Motor Company, IKEA, both amazing companies that was empowered by their founders, who actually completely changed the industry back then, the times. Like Henry Ford, in the beginning of 20th century, he actually made the vehicles, the motor vehicles, available for the many people. Back then, no one actually really needed those vehicles. They just wanted better horses. So he was a guy who actually reinvented the whole industry back then for the many people. And then IKEA as well. Well, there was a guy who just decided to sell furniture. Well, quite an innovative job, you would say, right? Like, there are so many furniture stores. Even back then in 40s in Sweden and all over the world, there were a lot of furniture stores. But the founder, Ingvar Kamprad, he found a way how to reinvent the whole furniture retail and how to make a one furniture store, which is now very loved and very known all around the world. So I saw those examples, and I constantly and desperately was looking for something that I can change and that I can build from scratch. And then I ended up quite spontaneously by this idea of locally. I was actually staying in St. Petersburg in my business trip for a number of days, just walking through the city, dreaming about, you know, the future when I would be able to run my own company. Had no idea how to do that though. And then this idea came up to my mind. It was a blast. I was completely shocked because that was that exact idea that I clearly realized I could put a lot of effort to. And actually, even more than 4 years ago, after that moment, I still feel very empowered, and I really am looking forward to develop locally. So the idea was pretty simple. I love to travel, so as you and many other people, and the best trips that I've ever had were when I was traveling to my friends. When my friends would meet me and they would show me around, all my best trips were looking like that, especially to California. This is the home of innovation, Silicon Valley. I was blessed to have quite a lot of friends in the area in Silicon Valley. And every time I was coming and meeting them, they always would, you know, invite me somewhere. They would tell me some hints and funny stories about living and working in Silicon Valley, and it inspired me quite a lot. So with that combination, I've just got this idea spontaneously. That would be awesome if there would be a service, an app where I would be able to match back with locals in the city where I'm traveling to, based by interests and language they speak, probably the cultural background, and who would be able to, you know, to meet me and show me around, just like I'm visiting my friend, because it probably it's not really possible to have friends everywhere. But with locally, you basically have friends everywhere. So I've got this idea and started doing my business from the very scratch. I was a corporate worker, knowing nothing about how to incorporate, how to register the company. And as you just had a great story of the legal aspect of making the innovative business, I knew nothing. So I really needed to learn something from someone, how to do that from scratch. Then I started basically attending the meetups and the meetings, later the accelerators, where mentors, in most of the cases for free, would share with me this priceless information. In the end, I launched locally as a company, and also I launched an MVP straight 3 years ago. So 12th of March 2018, just a few days ago, we were celebrating 3 years since we initially started the business. So locally right now, you can Google it, especially if you can Google in Russian. It's going to be very easy to find it. If you're going to just put in Russian letters locally, you will find our service. Basically, this is a platform for travelers where you can easily find inspiring localists, just like us here on the left. Anywhere in the world, you can book a tour with them, and that tour will not be like a standard boring tour by a tour guide, but it will be a meeting with a friend. Where historical part is just one part of the experience, and there are many other parts that are interesting and captivating, especially for you coming out of your interest. So with locally, we're aiming for those people who are using guided tours. We're aiming for those travelers who prefer self-travel, and we just provide them with an alternative. That's what locally is about. This is how it looks like. Well, almost outdated. If you're gonna check out locally in a few days from now, you're gonna see a brand new version of our website, which we were developing for quite a long time. As you can see, we decided not to stop because of the coronavirus, because of the global pandemic, but we worked pretty hard on the way to develop our platform. So it's of course still the beginning of our story. But there are also some achievements that we made on this way. So first, we have raised over $200,000 as the pre-seed round through Twitter. So it was quite an interesting fact that every time when we were trying to fundraise, just concretely using the patterns as everyone suggesting and trying to find some institutional VC or business angel through some databases, we were failing. But we got our 3 business angels who in total brought $200,000 to the business just from the social media. And that was quite remarkable, basically, for me. And it taught quite a lot, just personally. We're currently negotiating next seed round because we're trying, to climb that ladder of VC path that every startup is trying to achieve. So we are now going from the pre-seed round to the seed round. We have conducted more than 2,700 tours all over the world since our initial kickoff. Most of them have been conducted back then before the pandemic, but now we also had quite a great restart of our platform. We basically survived the COVID-19 pandemic, and part of my speech will be definitely dedicated to the times when you smashed. And when you don't see the future, and when you think that that's it, that's over, and your business will never succeed, and you just wasting your time, you're a time waster. And we not only survived the COVID-19 pandemic, but we managed to hit our financial record in terms of GMV, being in travel tech in the middle of pandemic with all the damn borders closed. We found a way how to hit our financial record. And 2 months of 2021 let us earn as much as we did during entire 2020. So I'm going to tell you about my 8 things that I've learned through these 4 intensive years of being a startup entrepreneur. And hopefully they will help you too. And you're always welcome to ask your questions, Maria, and I will definitely have a Q&A session straight after this speech. That one I love the most because I already mentioned it, and it is not the really obvious way, but if you develop the B2C product, if you're actually aiming the target customers who are not the businesses, but sometimes even with businesses, the most successful way to find an investor through PR and media. It was a very remarkable story by Nikolai Davidov, former Gagarin Capital managing partner. When he was giving his interview to Yuri Dut in Russian, he shared his story of investing in Masquerade, which was later purchased by Facebook. And he mentioned a very important fact that I, as a founder, noticed the same moment, because it's extremely important for me. Nikolai mentioned how he spotted the Masquerade, and then how he found a founder of Masquerade on Facebook, and then how he realized that that founder already texted him and tried to approach him, and Nikolai didn't read the message. That's the biggest problem. We could send lots of inquiries about our business. We could send great stories about our ambitions and our bright future, but in the end, a lot of investors will never read it, or they will read it from the different perspective, being very skeptical about your product, because they have to be. So when you make your product be noticeable on the market, when you get some spotlight through some media or through some activities, then there is a better chance to find an investor just like that. They will find you, not you. You will find them. This one is also pretty good. And it helps me a lot all the time. The world around us is a professionally designed VR simulation. That's what I'm trying to tell myself. Of course, not loud. It's my big secret. So you're the first to learn it. When something goes wrong, right? It's very easy to get panicked. But when you're panicking, it doesn't help to the whole thing. it doesn't help a lot. It actually just harms to your own business, and it harms to the way how you're gonna make the way through it. So when you say that everything that is happening around you is just professionally designed VR game, well, it helps a lot. You're not panicking, and you're just trying to, complete this level, get some achievements, or at least save, and then come back to your game a bit after. For instance, when you got some sleep and you can understand things better. When everything is bad, mind entrepreneurial swings. This is something that I've learned from a well-known Minsk-based startup conference called Emerge. Back then in 2019, I was attending as a startup. And one of the founders who were sharing his own experience, he emphasized that it's extremely important to remember that if you feel really crushed right now, if you think that everything went down to zero and you're gonna have no success, well, just wait. And in a few days, probably you will have a very good mood, and it will just simply change. The entrepreneurial swings is quite a common thing for everyone who is doing creativity, who is an entrepreneur, and who is facing all the time this also emotional instability. Today you think you're the winner and everything works out just for you, and then probably you have some success with your ongoing projects, but then in a few days again you're going to go down. So when you're up, just mind about going down and backwards. It helps. It's working for me at least. The team is everything, and crises. So all the crises that we facing on our way, they are helping us to find out who we are working with, and whether our aims, our goals are really the same. The crisis with the COVID-19, this huge disruption to the many industries like travel industry, it helped us understand who is here with us for long term, and who is actually ready not only to be with us in times of happiness, but also in times of struggle, and who is not. And this is real life. It's normal. And only those teams who are very much integrated, who are made to win the struggle, win the battles, those teams are the strongest ones. And crisis helps to build that kind of team. It could appear that a majority of your team members are not a good fit for these crisis periods, and that's actually good, because you will leave only the best and the most loyal and the most dedicated people with you, and after that they're going to be the second crisis and the third and the fourth. So you're gonna raise the team of the best, which will have no fear to any struggle, to any crisis. A closed door or someone leaving you in the team that corresponds to the previous point opens an opportunity for something new. So even when we think that tomorrow is we're gonna never succeed, or the team member who left us will contribute to basically the stop of the project, like co-founder has just left you because of the change of the priorities. It's not. Well, I saw that a few times in a row, that basically after something terrible has happened, always a new hope, a new opportunity arises. And sometimes without closing one door, you cannot find another. This is also a good one, a subtle art of understanding whether what you do is what people want. This is also quite important thing. Sometimes we just need to stand up near the mirror and reflect on the progress that we made through the last quarter or through the last year. If we are standing on the same level as we used to be 1 year ago, then definitely we're doing something wrong. And if we want to have some progress, we definitely need to change our whole strategy or change basically the thing that we are doing, right? Otherwise we will never succeed. But it also really helps when you actually did some progress and when you're moving in the right direction. Because of course, being yourself, you don't see much progress, right? You are living day to day with your minds, with your team, and you might think that you're probably staying on the same page or even moving slowly down. It helped me a lot in the time of in the time of grief, not to leave my project and still be with it in all different difficult times, because I was normally making this reflection, analyzing where I've been 1 year ago, and I still could spot some progress. Helped me a lot to continue this work and helped me to prove that I'm still on my way, still moving, not sleeping, and not stopping. The key thing here is to realize whether you are an entrepreneur by heart, or this is something that the society tries to, make you be. I don't know. I think if you're an entrepreneur, it comes from you from the childhood, in terms of organizing something, in terms of trying to set up the things. But in the meantime, if you're constantly struggling with all the entrepreneurial tasks, if the instability is the crucial factor for you that actually screws up your mood, then probably you need to change something, and you should try another role. I just basically recently realized that the stress, the problems, the crises make me feel even better, because these are the challenges and the problems that is very interesting to solve. And the final one, I realized that success comes at least after 1,000. Well, this is a saying, basically, to be frank. Success comes at least after 1,000 hours contributed to something. Well, if you're going to split it down, 1,000 of hours is quite a lot. And actually, this is a typo, not hours, but days. And this is quite a lot, more than 3 years of constantly doing something on a full-time basis. There is a saying, I'll just leave it to you, but I'll share my own example as the final fact. 1 year ago, I was attending the Web Summit conference in Lisbon, and just spontaneously, I bumped into the party held by DigitalOcean. Well, the most interesting part of any conference is actually parties overnight, because this is the time when you can, meet some interesting people and get acquainted with them. And I bumped up into the DigitalOcean party, where it appeared that there are all the founders of DigitalOcean, and they are Russians. They are Russian speakers, but they live already for a long time in the United States. Well, this is a first shocking thing that shocked me that night. And then I was really happy and was really fortunate to get into discussion with the founders. And I asked them about their success. And they said that they spent more than 7 years working really hard on the product before they got some first success, before they got spotted, before they got growing. So this is also pretty important thing to keep in mind, along with another example that I got just today, watching the YouTube video with Mr. Milner, who is like the most famous Russian investor in Silicon Valley, and who was basically sharing his own experience that the normal company normally needs 15 to 20 years to get to the level of to get a value of more than $100 million. in total. That's it. I think trying not to teach you. This is my own experience, and I know for sure that you know it even better. So if you have any questions, any feedback, I would really appreciate. Here are my contacts. If you want to directly approach me, I'm also really happy to answer you privately.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. Yes, there are some questions and there are many comments, many compliments. Well, the first question would be, what's your monetizing strategy, partnerships or ads?
Our tours are not for free because we don't believe in the couch surfing model. Well, when there is something for free, people try to abuse it. So we're now developing two models. The first model is if you want to get a tour from a locally, you need to give a tour first to someone in your city. Some of us don't have time for that, or our cities are not that popular and don't have too many tourists. Then we are just, we can use the service of locally by paying money. And the half-day tour with locally costs €89 all over the world. That means Europe. For CIS countries, we have different pricing strategy. And €129 is the price for the whole day with the locally. The most important thing, this is the price for not just for you, but also for a group of people who are traveling together with you. So basically, this is a classical marketplace strategy where withholding a service fee. So every time when I'm giving a tour to someone, again, same situation. I could either take money and cash it out to my bank account, or leave it in the system and use it for as a points for the tour with someone else when I'm traveling somewhere.
Thank you so much. The next question: how do you find locals for your company?
That's a really good question. Thanks for asking. Basically, they find us, not us finding them, because we are normally hunting all the time for travelers. It's harder to find travelers because you need to find someone who is there to pay you their money, and they are actually in planning the trip or already in a trip. It's extremely hard. So normally we are trying to find people who are still sitting or laying on a sofa at home, and maybe even not planning the trip, expecting that some point of time when they will finally go somewhere on the trip, they will use a locally. But meanwhile, before the trip, they will be adapting the app. They will be using it, and also the problem with the lack of trust will be solved. Meanwhile, and on that way, when we are hunting for travelers, for customers, we are finding localies. Because to become a local, it's very easy to become a locally. You just need to fill in the application. You can become a locally anytime. You don't need to pay money for it. So that's why it's organically that we are. We're just getting this traffic and getting localies very organically. But in the very beginning, of course, we had to, ask our friends and the friends of our friends. Just try to approach random people which we like on Instagram. We were asking them to become a locally, and that's how that worked for us.
Thank you so much. And the next question is in Russian, if you don't mind.
That's okay.
Yes. Откуда брать идеи, если нет вдохновения? Что вдохновляет вас?
Пешие прогулки. На самом деле медитация, пешие прогулки – это, наверное, то, что вообще очень сильно… И вообще, и просто, когда вы можете побыть с собой наедине, это сильно запускает мыслительную деятельность. Я очень долго, просто годами мечтал о какой-то идее фикс, как мне сделать свой бизнес, да, и чем заняться. И какие-то идеи были совершенно там сумасшедшие, там, типа умного дома. То есть классная идея, но которыми не лежало сердце. То есть я в какой-то момент понял, что это не то, что прямо вот зажгет во мне какую-то страсть и желание это все развивать на протяжении долгого времени в ущерб там личной жизни и вообще просто в ущерб всем остальным сферам жизни. Вот. И идея с локали пришла как раз после серии таких очень длинных прогулок по Петербургу. Город красивый, много на чем можно посмотреть. Я был тогда наедине. Вот эта проблема просто не давала мне жить. Не очень хотелось какое-то свое дело. Мне не хватало моей корпоративной работы. И в какой-то момент, хоп, и пришло. Поэтому быть наедине с собой, наверное, медитировать, гулять, в общем, делать что-то, что заставляет вас задуматься, что-то и мыслить. Кому-то очень помогает прослушивание музыки, например, выйти на нужный лад. У каждого свой собственный хак, как это сделать, вот, но вы наверняка тоже знаете, как это для вас работает лучше.
Okay, thank you so much. That was amazing. And please accept all the compliments we've left in the comments on YouTube. All the respect from our team. Thank you so much. Much love.
Thank you, Marie. It's a pleasure. Yep, have a great day, everyone. We'll stay in touch.
Yes. So now it's time to take a break to proceed all the information, and we highly recommend you to stay tuned and take part in our quiz. The prizes for the best of the best are following. The first one is an umbrella from SBH offices, a discount card at Respect Menswear Store, and a startup heart mask. The second prize is an umbrella from SBH law offices and our mask. And the third prize is notebook and an eco pen with our logo. The link is right in the comment section. Don't miss the chance to win prizes from our respected partners, SBH offices and Respect Menswear. So while you're all joining, you can leave some comments and we can speak for a little bit, and yeah, that's it. So did you like our speakers, the speeches? How do you feel about them? Well, I'm waiting for you all to sign up, and when we can finally start the game. I hope you've already received the code. It's 183904. So please join us. Now, do not to miss the prizes. They are unique. So I can't really see if anyone has joined. There are no active users at all, and I hope it's just me. Please leave a comment if you have already joined. I hope you can see my screen right now. Please leave a comment if you see it. There you can see our code. Come on, you can win some prizes. Don't miss the chance. Yeah, I can see the first person. Leave a comment if you're about to join, because I'm waiting for you. Okay, there are 2 active users. That's nice. Waiting for at least 2 more, or I don't know. So please join us. Nice, there are 3 people. So we can start soon. Don't be shy, join us. Yes, there are 1 more. We'll wait for a little bit and then we can start, I guess. Please leave a comment if you want to join us, but you need some time to do this. I'm waiting for you guys. Well, there are 5 active users and I don't know if anyone else would join. So we'll wait for another minute and then we can start. Come on, don't forget about the prizes. That's a unique opportunity, I'm telling you. The code is right on the screen. And while we're waiting, I can remind you of our partners and our prizes. The first prize is an umbrella from SBH Law Offices, a discount card at Respect Men's Foreign Store, and a Startup Hat mask. The second prize is an umbrella from SBH Law Offices and our mask. And the third prize is a notebook and an eco pen with our logo. Don't miss the chance. All of this you can get with the help of our partners, SBH Law Offices and Respect Menswear Store. I see there is one more who wants to join. Yes. Okay, I guess now we can start. Are you ready? Yes. Let's go. Due to which conception Toyota company became famous? You have 20 more seconds to answer this question. It's not only about the correct answer, it's also about the speed. You should answer fast and correct to get more points. Okay, let's check it. No one got it right. The right answer was Kaizen. That's it. The second question, what is the first reason why business fail? A, there is no strategy. B, there's lack of chemistry and teamwork between employers. C, there is no market need. And D, there's lack of funds. Yeah. Okay, 3 more seconds. And the right answer was there is no market need. Almost everyone got it. The third question, what is O2O? A, open to offer, and B, online to offline. That should be quite easy. Yes. So the next question. Yahoo is an acronym of yet another hierarchical officious oracle. B, there is no acronym. And C, yet another hidden offering opportunity. Okay, try to get it right. Okay, let's check it. And the right answer is the first one. Yes. The next. Name of the company not included in the HTTP. EPAM, Shell, or e-transition. Okay. Almost everyone answered. There's one more person to wait. Oh, I guess. Okay, and the correct answer is Shell. Next one. What is elevator speech? A, an inspirational and uplifting speech to encourage your employees. B, a clear and compelling way to describe a business and its concept in 30 seconds. C, a speech which improves our competence in a certain field. Oh, you're so active. That's nice. Nice, I like it. And the correct answer is in a second. And yeah, elevator speech is a clear and compelling way to describe a business and its concept in 30 seconds. Almost everyone got it. The seventh question is, what is the name of a startup with a market value of over $1 billion? A fairy, a unicorn, or a magic wand? The answer is in 3, 2, 1. Let's check it. And its name is a unicorn. That was quite unexpected. So let's continue. What is the best startup ecosystem in the world? Silicon Valley, New York City, or Shanghai? Okay, I'm waiting for your answers. I hope everyone got it right. Yes, 100% right. You know it well, guys. So now we can continue. The ninth question. What is the business program that supports early-stage growth-driven companies through education, mentorship, and financing? Incubator, accelerator, or business park? There you go. Okay. The answer is in 3, 2, 1. Where is it? Yes, that was accelerator. That's a familiar word for us. And the last question for the day, what happened when mathematics, economics, and code were connected on the web? Bitcoin, stock exchange, and new programming language. Try to get it right. There are 10 seconds left. Let's check if you got it right. Yes, that was Bitcoin. I guess it was the last question, so let's check our winners. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. And Cation 07 was the best for the day and got 884 points. Congratulations. And please, everyone who won the first, the second, and the third place, please contact us on social media, anywhere on Telegram, Instagram, anywhere, so we can send you the prizes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it's time to go on. Let's welcome our last but not least speaker for today, Anna Sultanovic. She is the SBH Law Office's lawyer, and she would like to tell you about the employment.
Hi, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you for inviting me over to be a speaker. I also prepared a presentation, so if you don't mind, I will share my screen with you. I hope you can see it.
Yes.
Great. Okay, now, by way of introduction, my name is Anna Sultanovic. I'm an associate at SBH Law Offices in Minsk. I specialize in foreign economic activity in labor law and in personal data mostly, and also in general contracting law. So my colleague, Екатерina Logvинович, already gave her presentation on certain corporate and regulatory aspects of starting a company. And I want to talk to you today about the basics of Belarusian employment law. And here I need to say that it is impossible to cover all aspects of employment law because it's a very complex and broad range of law. However, I will try to give you a basic understanding of how employment law works in Belarus and to give you just a very, very general overview of some basic aspects. And I hope it will not be super boring for you. Maybe it doesn't sound as exciting as previous topics that were covered, but please bear in mind that if you decide to start a company, knowing and being aware of certain legal aspects beforehand will help you to avoid a lot of problems in future, legal problems. So I hope my presentation will help you to understand the most important things you need to know if you're deciding to start a company in Belarus. So today we will discuss several key topics about employment law. Firstly, I will talk about the basics of employment law, the distinction between employees and independent contractors. Secondly, I will talk about the employment agreement, the main document in employment relations between the company and the employees. Also, I will talk about the remuneration of the employees, meaning about the salary and how to pay it and how much to pay your employees. And lastly, I will cover a very popular topic nowadays, which is remote work and how it is different from the normal office work that we are used to. So let's start first with some basics of employment law and the distinction between employees and independent contractors. When starting a company, let's say as a founder, you need to find people who will actually do the work and make your company gain profit. And here you will eventually face the need to make a choice between employees and independent contractors. And before going further into the employment law, I would like to draw the line between the employees and independent contractors, because at some point your company will most likely need both of them. So firstly, employees are people who are hired by a company to provide labor for a long-term period, and they work under employment agreements. They receive a specific type of remuneration that is called salary, and they enjoy special benefits and protections that are granted to them by the legislation. And on a side note, I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that it is very important to understand that the labor law in most countries, I think in all countries, not only in Belarus, is aimed mainly at protecting the employee's interest in the first place, because the employee is seen in this relationship as a weaker party. So this is particularly seen when dealing with employment disputes, for example, where the court in most cases rules any discrepancies or any inconsistencies in the favor of the employee. So this is one of the most important principles of employment law, of labor law. And the reason why I'm telling you this now is because any decision made by the employer has to be very carefully evaluated prior, from the perspective if it complies with the law and if it complies with the employer's interests, because it will help to avoid potential disputes in future. So now continuing with the distinction, relationship between the employer and the employee is categorized as employment relationship, and it is governed mainly by the labor code. So this is the main legal act in the sphere of employment law. And if you need to check any how this or that issue is regulated in law when you are dealing with employment, you need to go check the labor code first. And on the contrary, an independent contractor is a person who performs works or renders services independently, and this person is not engaging into any employment relations. And from the legal perspective, the independent contractor and the client, they are equal parties to a commercial relationship. So the work
is provided by this person under a civil contract, and thus this relationship is governed by civil legislation, namely the Civil Code of the Republic of Belarus and other related acts. So if you need people who are working for you on daily basis, it's better to hire them as employees. And further, I will explain how to do this. If your company needs certain services or works rendered on a one-off basis, maybe once or twice. For example, let's say if you need to develop a logo for your company and it's only work that you need to get done. And further, you don't need to keep a graphic designer as your employee. Then you can just hire an independent contractor. You can you can offer this person to develop a logo for your company for a certain amount of remuneration. You can conclude a civil contract. When the work is done, you will terminate the contract, and this is how your relationship ends with this person. And on the contrary, if you employ a person, if you hire a person, this is a long-term relationship normally, and they're regulated by special labor legislation. So I hope this is clear. And now I also wanted to say that legally there are no requirements on how many people a company should employ, but well, there can be 1 or 2 persons employed in a company. But in reality, you will most likely need more people. So first of all, you will need a director, well, management, someone from the management, a person who will represent your company and who will act on behalf of your company. It can be a CEO or a managing director, whatever you like. Secondly, you will most likely need a chief accountant. It is an obligation of every company to do the accounting. And usually most companies have a chief accountant as their employee so that this work is done easily. But if you don't want to keep a chief accountant in your company as an employee, you can also outsource this function. This is also an option. And thirdly, you of course need general employees who will perform the work, and the number and the positions, everything depends on the type of business that your company is performing. Now, let's move further to the employment agreement. This part will be even more legal, a little bit boring maybe, but it also should be known by anyone who wishes to start a company. First of all, employment agreement is the main and the most important document in employment relations. It must be signed with all employees. There are no exceptions. And generally, there are 2 types of employment agreements distinguished by the law. This distinction depends on the term of the agreement. So firstly, there is indefinite term agreement. You can see it on the slide. The name speaks for itself. It means that this agreement doesn't have any term, any fixed period of effectiveness. And secondly, there is a fixed term agreement, an agreement that has an end date. And one important type, let's say, of this fixed term agreement is a contract. Now, currently in Belarus, most employees are employed under contracts, which are fixed term agreements, and they are subject to a special regulation. And also contracts, a contract is the most popular option. And the second popular option is an employment agreement, indefinite term agreement, the one that doesn't have a fixed effective term. Here on this table, I put the main differences between indefinite term agreements and contracts. You can see here that firstly, it is of course the term. The indefinite term contract doesn't have an end date. And on the contrary, the contract in fact has an end date, it has an effective period, and the contract can be concluded for minimum 1 year and maximum 5 years. So if when the 5-year term of the contract expires, the employer is obliged to conclude a new contract or a new employment agreement, because this one has already expired. You cannot work under this contract.
Second, the content of the document. Here I put the articles of the labor code that speak specifically about the contents of this document. I will elaborate on them a little bit further. Just note that all employment agreements have to include certain information that is listed in Article 19 Labor Code, and contracts, in addition to that information, also have to include certain provisions which are listed in Article 2621(2) of the Labor Code. And you will see this, this type of information further in the presentation. And lastly, the termination of the contract or of the indefinite term agreement. There are common grounds of termination of employment in the labor legislation, and I will speak about them a little bit later briefly. But the most important thing that you should understand is that indefinite term agreement can be terminated by an employee with a prior 1 month written notice. What does it mean? It means that at any time, an employee is entitled to go to the director of the company or just go to the employer and say, I want to be dismissed in 1 month. And this is an absolute right of the employee. There are no exceptions. So this is one of the peculiarities of the indefinite term agreement. The employee can end it at any time with a 1 month prior notice, and the employer cannot do anything about it. And on the other hand, the contract has an end date. It is a fixed term contract. And it means that when this contract expires, when it comes to an end, the parties may just terminate their relationship and that's it. They will have no obligations toward each other. But also the other side of the medal is that in practice, it is very difficult to terminate contract if either of the parties refuses to. So this is another side of concluding a contract. But as I mentioned previously, contracts are the most common, the most popular type of employment agreement. So if you start a company, you will most likely conclude contracts with your employees. And now this is what I call the content of an agreement. Here I put just the extracts from the labor code for you to just have a general understanding what kind of information has to be there in an employment agreement. And Article 19 Labor Code is the article that says about compulsory provisions that have to be included into any agreement. That is such information as the parties of the contract, obviously, the place of work, the labor function or the position, the job title, if you wish, main rights and obligations of the parties, work rest regime, such as working hours, periods for lunch and rest, and remuneration for work, well, the amount of salary to get paid. But also, if we speak about contracts, there are also special provisions that have to be included in any contract, and you can see them on the screen. Well, this is very, very legal language, but it's just something that you also need to always keep in mind if you conclude a contract with an employee. There are certain provisions that have to be there no matter what, such as days and frequency of the salary payment, obligation to notify each other about your wish to continue or to terminate the employment, and other provisions which you may see on the screen. And due to the lack of time, I will not be further elaborating about them, but it has to be taken into account. But also what is important here is that an employment contract, indefinite term agreement or a contract, it has to also contain certain key provisions which we as a law firm working with labor issues always recommend to include. Those are, of course, confidentiality provisions. If you're not signing a separate non-disclosure agreement with your employee, you have to include confidentiality provisions in the employment contract in order to ensure some kind of confidentiality of your commercial secret, of your confidential information. Also, there are intellectual property clauses This is applicable to your company in cases specifically if you are dealing with software development or development of other intellectual property objects. In order to avoid further disputes connected with intellectual property, we recommend including certain IP rights provisions into the labor employment agreements. Also, we recommend to include consent for personal data collection. Now, we don't have the special regulation, special law on personal data adopted yet, but I think it will be adopted soon. But nevertheless, we already recommend our clients to include a certain provision that states in the contract that the employee gives their consent to collect and to process and to store, to keep personal data by the employer. So this will also help to avoid potential conflict, potential violations of personal data regulations in future. And there are also different provisions that you can include into the contract. If they do not contradict the law, then you can include whatever you wish, depending on the type of your business. So now I suggest to talk a little bit about the employee's remuneration, which is salary for the work. Here I listed certain important provisions that need to be taken into account. First of all, the amount of minimum basic salary that is established by law, and that is currently 400 Belarusian rubles. So this is the minimum salary that any employer, notwithstanding what kind of company it is, whether it is state-owned or privately owned, any employer is obliged to pay at least 400 Belarusian rubles for a full-time work of an employee. But there is no upper limit for the salary amount. So the question of how much you should pay to your employees remains up to you. It remains open always, because it's always up to the company to decide how much money it is ready to pay for the work of the employees. What is also important to understand is that the employer serves as a tax agent for the employees. So the employer, as the company, is obliged to deduct and to pay the income tax on behalf of the employees, which is now 13%. And the same goes to the contributions to the Social Security Fund, which we know in Russian as FSZN. So the employer is also obliged to deduct and pay 1% of the salary, of the income of the employee, to the Social Security Fund. And one more important aspect of the salary is that decrease of salary is considered as the change of essential working conditions. And under the Labor Code, change of essential working conditions is subject to special regulation. So you cannot just say to your employee that starting from tomorrow, your salary will be lower. In this case, you will violate the law, and the employee will have all the rights to sue you in court. What you need to do is to give the employee, if you want to decrease the salary for some reason, you need to give your employee a 1 month prior notice, written notice, which is important, to notify your employee that his or her salary will be decreased in 1 month. And in case the employee refuses to work under this changed essential working condition, then you as the employer will have the right to dismiss this employee. You will have the right to fire this employee based on such ground as refusal to work under this changed essential working conditions. Well, about the salary, I think this is all that I had to say. And now we are coming to the last part, which is office work versus remote work. It is now very popular to, well, let's say popular, to transfer employees to remote work, which means that they work not from the office, but from home or from any preferred place. We all know the reason for this. This is the pandemic and the need to adjust to current conditions where the employees sometimes get sick. The employees have to stay isolated. In some countries, it is even compulsory. And it is regulated by the law. In Belarus, it is less strict, but we still have some regulations and we have some recommendations from the authorities that sick people are not allowed to enter the office. They're not allowed to contact with anyone. So in this case, we also had recent introductions into the labor code that became effective in January last year. This is the introduction of so-called remote work. So what does it mean? It means that now it is legally permissible for the employee to perform the work remotely and not from the employer's office, which is usually the case. So the main differences between work from office and remote work is that in the office, the work is carried out in ordinary manner, usually at the employer's premises. And when we are talking about remote work, then the work itself and the communication with the employer is carried out remotely by the means of information technologies such as the internet, of course, email, telephone, messengers, different websites, platforms, anything that can be handy for the parties to communicate and to exchange information between them. Second important distinction is that during the remote work, the employee does not have a workplace. The employee is free to decide where to work, from which place to work. The employee is not obliged to come to the office every day. The employee is not obliged to come to the office at all in this case. And lastly, the communication with the employer when we're dealing with the remote work is done in a certain manner via internet, as I already mentioned, via email or by exchange of paper documents by post. It is also one of the ways to communicate with each other. But what has to be underlined here? One of the very useful aspects of remote work is that you can exchange documents, tasks, and basically any information remotely. But when it comes to actually signing the contract for remote work, this has to be done in the employee's presence. So if you decide to transfer your employee to remote work, you shall first sign the contract physically, being present in the same room, let's say. And after that, you, as an employee, you are free to perform your work anywhere. Also, the employer may provide the employee with the equipment and the software needed to perform the work. On the other hand, the employee may perform work using their own equipment, their own computers, laptops, whatever. Everything is decided between the parties. So here the parties have actually a very broad range of ways and rights how to organize this work, if it does not contradict the law, of course, and if it does not violate the employee's interests. So I think my time has run up now, and maybe I have some minutes for questions. I hope this information was useful for you, and I'm ready to answer any questions or any comments.
Yes, thank you so much for this amazing speech, Anna. And there are some questions. The first one is in Russian. Нужно ли уплачивать налоги государству, работая во фрилансе на самого себя?
Я могу ответить по-русски, если вопрос тоже на русском.
Да?
Смотрите, работая на самого себя, это работа, получается, человек работает как, либо просто как физическое лицо, либо как индивидуальный предприниматель, и, конечно же, В этом случае тоже нужно уплачивать налог. Это будет подоходный налог 100% с физического лица, потому что все физлица выплачивают подоходный налог 13%. Просто единственное тут различие в том, что если вы работаете по трудовому договору, то этот налог за вас уплачивает наниматель, но он все равно уплачивается с ваших же денег, то есть с вашей зарплаты. Если вы работаете сам на себя как фрилансер, то есть у вас нет никакого трудового договора, вы напрямую там получаете деньги от заказчиков, например, да, то тогда вы этот налог обязаны уплачивать сами. Вы сами заполняете декларацию, подаете в налоговые органы, и тот же самый взнос в ФСЗН 1% тоже вы уплачиваете, и подоходный налог, конечно, тоже. Поэтому, да, мой ответ – нужно уплачивать, с любых доходов нужно уплачивать налог.
Хорошо, спасибо. Thank you for your answer. The next question, can contract be terminated during the probation period if there's any?
Yes, there is such ground of termination of the contract as termination due to failure to go through the probation period. And under the law, under the labor code, the maximum term of probation period is 3 months. So if your employee is under probation period, then you as the employer may terminate the contract at any day with a prior, if I'm not mistaken, 3 days notice. Well, I may be wrong here, but there should be some notice. Or you can terminate the contract at the end of the probation period. So there are two grounds for termination in this case. But yes, it can be terminated during the probation period. This is what the probation period is actually used for, to see if you can do the job.
Okay, thank you so much. And the last but not least question for today, can you tell more about the company you work at, SBH Law Offices?
Of course, I will gladly do so. Well, my company, SBH Law Offices, is a company that deals mostly with commercial matters. Our clients are mostly businesses. We have offices in Minsk and in Kyiv in Ukraine. So we deal with court disputes and with various commercial matters such as corporate matters, labor matters, M&A transactions, investments, taxes, anything that can be potentially useful for businesses. I personally deal with labor issues and with general contract law, with foreign investments, sometimes with taxes. And my colleague Екатерina Logvинович, who also presented here before me, she deals with investments, with IT law, which is also a branch which we work on, and with corporate matters. So basically, anything that may be needed for a business, we can cover it.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. You can see my contacts on the screen. So if you have any other questions, you can contact me directly.
Sure, thank you. And thanks to all our speakers for the valuable information. It was a great pleasure for me to host this event, and thank everyone for joining us. You can watch our previous speaker sessions on YouTube. Follow us on social media in order not to miss updates on the project. And the winners, I'll show them on the screen. Just a moment. Yes, the winners of the quiz, please contact us. The first, the second, and the third place, so we can send you the prizes. Thank you for joining us today. Have a good week. Bye.